we are back.
We're back!
Hey everybody, Hostrone here with another first edition Friday video for you. I'm back. I apologize for the long absence, but as I said in my last video before the break, once it gets to be spring and I am able to be outdoors doing stuff on weekends and Friday evenings, that is where I'm going to be. I will be on a golf course. I will be doing stuff with my wife and weens and family and friends, and not sitting here in my man cave recording a video. So we're kind of now in to fall. It is October, and thus I have some more time now to start making more videos. So you can expect that I'm going to try to make some more videos now during this kind of off season, which was also kind of part of my thinking, is that once we kind of get into like serious like competition time, regionals, continentals, worlds and stuff, I don't really like to put these videos out because I don't want to have like an effect on meta. I don't want to put decks out there, ideas out there or whatever, that might affect the outcomes of things. I don't want to tip what I might be doing, what I might be thinking, should I play in any of those events? So, yeah, I'm back now though, and let's just kind of get into it. This video, we're just going to talk about Worlds a little bit. Yes, it was 2 months ago, but, you know, it's still relevant, and it's still something fun to talk about, and then after we talk about it a bit, we'll go into something related to that. So, I'm going to go ahead and pull up. So this was the results of day one. Neil won, I mean, you all know this. I'm just going to go over it just for whatever reason, but I mean, you all know the results. Like I said, it's been 2 months. Neil won. They took top 7. So these people down to Andreas got in, and then they had a side tournament to figure out who the 8th person would be to round out the top 8 for the day 2. There's really not much to say about day 1 here. It just is a whole bunch of like people playing straight solvers for the most part, just trying to either go faster or have some kind of trick. Like Stefan played Romulan drones, so he's trying to, you know, see if you know, he just gets matched up with enough people that are not prepared to slow down his drone, like, you know, dilemma avoidance tactic. And, you know, Michael here is literally just playing like as fast as I can go feds, with the ability to just punch through dilemmas with skilled, dense personnel. And then of course Neil, who just ran with like, I'm going to play 23 dilemmas at you. And so that's kind of what Neil did, was he tried to, I mean, he saw, or at least I'm guessing that he kind of just said, hey, I think this day 1 meta is going to be a bunch of solvers. And so how can I kind of gain an advantage on that? And he chose to go with the, I'm going to play 23 dilemmas, and I'm going to be better prepared for dealing with shenanigans vis-a-vis drones, and maybe like random, like, oh, someone's trying to play with 6 planets or 6 space, because he actually had like the ability to hit people with balancing act, which I think is just great, because I mean, Neil knows the European meta likes to have someone show up with that, so I think that's just smart on his part. And then of course he also decided to run with counter tech here with Amanda's and Kevin's as a way to try to gain advantage on somebody who might be trying to gank him with stuff. I'm sure part of what he was thinking was that he might end up facing gaps in normal space and crap like that that might get in his way. So yeah, clearly everything that Neil seemed to be concerned about, seemed to be prepared for. Oh, he was prepared for it. He had his responses. He had his answers to those things, and it obviously worked out great. That he was able to then ride his double earn by, and then just play 3 games against, you know, the other like top players, and then therefore be prepared enough that all he had to do was like pull a couple of wins out and he's fine, which he then immediately did. And so by the time he gets to like round 5 and he takes his loss, it doesn't matter. He's already, you know, on top of the heap, and he's punched his ticket to day 2. So there's really not, like I said, not much to say here. The only thing that I would say personally is that if I had like shown up to this personally, I would have been the guy that was like, okay, you know, I'm gonna run Borg Assimilation, I'm gonna run Dominion Slaughter, I'm gonna run something of that nature to kind of counter that expected meta, where I can just basically farm everybody like just trying to go faster and play their best deck, quote unquote, against the field, right? Because I would expect that a European Day 1 Worlds meta is going to basically be filled with either people trying to like go fast or trying to just basically leverage some kind of weird little trick that they're just going to try to ride their way into that top 7. So that's just personally what I would have done, and you know, a Borg Assimilation deck like in particular would have definitely farmed like this entire like meta. I mean, there's not really anything that I see here that would make me go, oh, that's a bad matchup. Like, I mean, like Michaels and Steffens and and to a lesser extent Patty's like day 1 deck here just absolutely gets farmed by like, you know, a Borg Assimilation deck. So yeah, so, and then like Florian here in particular, Andreas as well. Like all these decks that ended up at the top would have been farmed by Borg Assimilation. And then of course, make that top 7, and then you've telegraphed that you're playing Borg Assimilation, and if it was me, then of course everyone's going to go, oh, well, Kevin played Borg Assimilation day 1, he thinks he's got an angle on Borg Assimilation. And then I would have switched on day 2 to figuring something else out, like entirely, and going like, okay, now how can I, now that I've seen the day 1 meta, I see kind of what people are doing, how can I then like run a counter strategy for day 2 to leverage what I think people are going to shift to. So, and then it leads us to day 2. So based on that thought, like what I would then do personally is I would then like completely switch and go off script, run counter what people are thinking, and I would run like the most angular mission solver deck that I have, right? And then ran protection myself against people trying to battle me if they're then thinking, okay, the same thing. So that's just personally what I would have done. I wasn't there, doesn't matter. What that leads me to, though, is that when we get to then Worlds Day 2, and then we add, and then Alec was then able to win the side event, get in here. When you see your matchups, because then since it's bracket, you know who your first round opponent's going to be. You have an idea of who your second round opponent's going to be. What I'm going to say is that Neil chose to think, I mean, it looks to me like Neil's like, okay, I'm 1 versus 8. He had to win a side event. I clearly believe in my deck to beat him. And so I'm just going to play the same deck or something really close to it. And then I know that I'm going to face either Patty or Justin, and in which case, if they also stay on the same deck or they stay on the same, if they stay on the same kind of like theory of like, okay, I don't see anybody else here who's going to run like crazy shenanigan type tech in my side of the bracket, so I'm just going to play like my best solver deck again. Well, then Neil for sure is like, well, I'm just going to ride that out. Like if I'm Neil, I'm thinking I'm just going to ride that out. On the flip side of this bracket, if I am any of these people, Michael, Andreas, Stefan, Florian, this is the side of the bracket of shenanigans. So it's just funny how this worked out, and this is all my opinions, right? This is just my take, my observation, is that the top side of this bracket is all people that are known for basically like, I'm going to play something that's fast, I'm going to play something that's reliable, I'm not going to play anything that's super janky. Neil is probably the only person in this group who would play quote-unquote janky, and then if he chooses not to play janky, then he knows that he's like, if I want to make the championship, I need to have I need to just have like the best deck for like winning fast games. So Neil could have been the person to go, I'm going to make the switch to playing battle, and I'm going to try to farm my first 2 rounds and then see what I pull from the bottom half of the bracket in the championship game. Or he's also thinking like, but if I believe in my solver deck, my fast deck, my prepared deck, I can ride that out, and then if the other side of the bracket is bringing the jank, can I just be better than that? So that's just kind of the thought process, that if I was in Neil's shoes, that's what I would have done. That's my thinking. Doesn't matter where you are, you have to just kind of analyze the bracket that night before and decide what your strategy is going to be. Now, like I said, on the other side of the bracket, this is the side of the bracket where anything can happen, right? It's just funny to me how it actually turned out. All of this to basically say that what I think that Andreas did was brilliant. I don't know if he did this on purpose, if it was accidental, if he just like captured lightning in a bottle while just literally standing in his backyard. I don't know. I mean, you'd have to ask him. I haven't had a chance to interview him. But whether it was an intentional or accidental, I think it was brilliant regardless. That what he chose to do is say, I'm going to bring like as many dilemmas as I can possibly throw in here. If Michael's got jank, I've got the defense to slow him down. If he's playing speed, I feel like I can beat him with my dilemmas that are in defense. That gets me to my second round where I got to play Stefan or Florian, 2 guys that could bring literally anything as well. In which case, my best, most reliable way to try to compete is through the thing that they all have to face, the thing that I don't have to like worry about, drawing it and being able to play it, or having it be like I need to be like in position with it situationally. I can just bring 29 dilemmas. I can bring 26 plus dilemmas, and I can reliably like slow them down, and I can try to grind out a win against higher seeded players than me, right? So what I think that Andreas did was just absolutely brilliant, that he chose to bring a deck that ends up being 29 dilemmas and 1 non-dilemma seed card, which gives, and then just relying on, okay, I'm gonna have reliable draw, I'm gonna have a couple of free plays, and then I'm going to cheat some stuff in, so I kind of get like a sort of third play, yeah. So what Andreas did, I think, was just brilliant. Of course, it has been pointed out. He's aware of it. He's responded to it already. That the deck was technically illegal because he had copies of the same Persona missions. And he said that obviously what he would just do is he would just rip those copies out and go with more Study Badlands, and that's perfectly fine. So then that leads me, and I'm not going to belabor this, because what he can do with 29 dilemmas means like he can literally craft the combos and stuff for what he faces. I don't know what his thinking process is here. I mean, he's playing with 2 copies of Mission Fatigue, so what he's choosing to do, I have no way of knowing. The only thing that I noticed was that there were some obvious combos where he's got Buried Alive, where he can then put a Space Amoeba in front of Flash Plasma Storm to like kill everybody. you know, and then he's running the temporal causality loops with like primal urges and stuff, which, you know, I'm guessing Andreas like saw my videos on that and copied that, which is great. So like I said, I don't really want to go too much into this, but what I did is I kind of poured over Andreas's deck and decided that, well, he would have to make changes anyway because of the fact that the deck was technically illegal. And so then what would I do if I was in his position and I was having a, like, if I caught that like the night before, or like someone points out the night before, like, hey dude, you got actually an illegal deck here, so you got to make changes to it. Like, what would I then do? If I'm him, what would I do to make changes to the deck and then be able to play the deck where it's still more or less the same deck, but it's got a little bit of change to it? So what I did is I did that. I sat down with his deck and then I started like making changes to it to what I think would been an equally good version of it. It's not going to have 29 dilemmas in it, but it is going to have, it's going to follow the spirit of the deck, which is to say I'm going to throw as many dilemmas, as much, you know, nonsense in front of my opponent as I can so that I can grind out a win against them. And this is what I came up with. So here's the deck. We kept it at 86 cards because I wanted to, like I said, kind of honor what the ratios were roughly that Andreas was thinking. And kind of like, and obviously like the Maquis kind of have a limited personnel selection. But this is what I came up with. So what I came up with was we go down to 26 dilemmas, but we lean a little bit more. We have the looking for the Parmok. I don't think he had that. Yeah, he does not have looking for Parmok. So what we then do is, even though we go down 3 dilemmas, the looking for Parmok acts as a dilemma, so it's 26. Plus it's going to get us 2 others. And then once they hit the temporal causality loop, it goes back underneath. It's going to grab 2 other ones. So it's kind of like we have 30 dilemmas in this deck. Okay. Then the other thing we did was I noticed that he was playing, obviously he's playing with primal urges and stuff. So what I thought is that let's leverage that with Let Me Help. So Let Me Help then is essentially acting as if it is another copy of Primal Urges times 2. So, you know, even if you want to say that, well, the looking for Parmok is like essentially just a +1 dilemma because it's replacing itself with 2 dilemmas. Well, the Let Me Help is doubling the effects of Primal Urges, and so it's acting as if it's another copy of Primal Urges. So we still functionally are playing like the 29 plus dilemmas that Florian was playing. We're just changing the strategy a bit. So we lean into that. Since we're going to go with Let Me Help, we're going to lean into that, and we changed up basically a lot of the dilemmas. Like we took mission fatigues out and stuff like that in order to leverage the Let Me Help. So now we are definitely acting like we're beyond 29 dilemmas, because now we've got Caliphes that are really strong. We've got doubled male's love interest. We've got doubled female's love interest combined with the garbage scow. And then we can still stick with a lot of stuff. I kept in the Buried Alive, Plasma Storm, you know, Space Amoeba combo just because it's cool. And we run it like, we run it in like exactly this package, like right here, you know? Like this is kind of like the combo, right? So, yeah, and then the other thing we do is we play with a Valuable Prisoner. We do Valuable Prisoner because what I noticed is that there was a way for us to be able to score bonus points, because with the change to the missions, with there being different missions, the math isn't the same as it was with Andreas's setup, because by having these missions, he was very able to easily do 35, 35, and 30. But when you have to take the duplicates out and you have to run with multiple study Badlands, well, that changes. You can do Find Hidden Base for 40, but then when you try to do Space, you've got, 35. No, wait, you can't do this for 40 because you're Maki. Sorry. This is 30. This is your only 35-point mission now. So you're literally stuck with like 35 and then, 30. And, if you somehow do these three, it's 35 plus 30 is 65 is 95. If you get a captive here, you can bump this one up. So we go with Valuable Prisoner to try to make Break Prisoner worth 40. Because then we can, like I said, do 40 here, and then we can do 35 here for 75, and then we have every other mission available to us for the last 25. Now, it relies on our opponent being in the Alpha Quadrant in order to have that work, but it is what it is, right? If for whatever reason we cannot solve this one for the 40, or if we want to try to deal with point loss better, like if we face Edo Probe and crap like that, and because the Valuable Prisoner gets us the download of a punishment card, we do have Labor Camp to score 5 points per turn. So in like a grindy game, if we can kill an opponent's person, and then we can capture them, and then we can stick them on one of these two planets here together, what we can easily do then is score 5 points turn after turn after turn, because we're hopefully grinding the game out with like all those dilemmas, right? And so, but we need to have a Cardassian or Ferengi. Well, guess what? I don't think he is even in the deck. No, he's not even in the deck that Andreas put in, but we have copies of Quark. He is a Maquis, and we can cheat him in using the same trick that Andreas is using for the other non-TNG Maquis, so that he doesn't break continuing mission. So, Blonde Suitor, B'Elanna Torres, Mavilles, Captain Chakotay, Cal Hudson, Tabor, Michael Eddington, the non-TNGs, we can do the same trick. We just have Macius grab Quark, because exchanging is not playing, and so it does not break. It doesn't break our continuing mission. So then what we have is a Ferengi affiliation person, so we can have Quark run our labor camp as a Ferengi, and we can have those points generate. And in a long, grindy game, this labor camp could easily be worth 20 points, 25 points, which means then that we could potentially even just 2-mission win. We can potentially get a captive, break prisoner for 40, do divert attention for 35, and then over 5 turns, labor camp it up to round the corner, which then gives us an additional edge on being able to grind out the opponent, that's the other thing. The 5 points that labor camp is grinding out for us makes it that much more likely that we can win a modified win game. Instead of losing, say we score this one for 30 and we score someone for 35 and we lose 70 to 65 or something, we can grind it out just a little bit better, right? Cool. So that's basically what we did. We kept a lot of the other same tricks. We did put the for the cause in so that we can try to solve, find hidden base. I want to say that I didn't even see it in here. I think that find hidden base was not a mission that Andres was even planning on solving because, because Athos 4, whatever, I don't think he's even trying to do it, right? Because he had like search and rescue along with break prisoner, and he had verify evidence, which is, so he was probably thinking that he's like, I could do verify evidence or divert attention and then just do 2 planet missions that are not find hidden base. I don't know how he was planning on solving this because there's no Cardassians, no Dominion personnel, and he did not have a copy of For the Cause in there to get around it. So we put the copy of For the Cause into the deck. Because that's the other seed card that we have is the Q10. Since we're not going to slave to 29 dilemmas, we are going to have a Q10, which allows us to put some additional cards in. It allowed us to like move some cards to the tent, allows us to get in those other ones. We also have interrogation, that if instead of doing the labor camp, like for whatever reason, what we can do is interrogation, because instead of, and this is the thinking, if the opponent's in another quadrant and we cannot relocate them with the valuable prisoner, then what we have, what we have is then it's a trap card. So I believe that's how that works. You do as much as you can. Place on a person who is about to be killed. Relocate as a captive to your crew or team in the same quadrant, and then you may download. So if they're not in the same quadrant, then, because the thing is though too is we can also labor camp, and then we can also, like, say we've generated like 15 points of labor camp, actually never mind, scratch all that because we don't have any way of doing both of them. My bad, I was thinking something different. Like, if for whatever somehow the person gets killed or whatever, there was a whole like long string of things, but it's like never gonna happen, so don't worry about it. I'm talking in circles here. My mind is in 4 different places at once here, trying to explain all my thinking with this deck. But basically, like, we have options here that if for whatever reason we can't do the labor camp, we can potentially do an interrogation type of a thing. So, Other than that, the deck basically plays out the exact same way that Andreas was trying to play it. We did mess around with the ratios though, when it comes to the copies of Macius. We did put more copies of Macius in because when I was doing playtesting, it sure felt like we were not getting enough Maciuses, and when it came to like the mutations, it felt like we were also not quite getting enough mutations on schedule, right? And then when it came to the copies of Strategic Sector, it felt like we were always getting too many. So I dropped 2 Strategic Sectors in order to find the room for the 2 mutations. We get the 4 Maciuses by messing around with some of the other cards that were in the draw deck. Like, we just drop the preparations entirely. We just drop the regenerate. Some of these other cards that are in the deck went to the Q's tent, and that's what allows us to find the copies of Quark that we have in the deck, along with the extra copies of Macius, because we have 3 Quarks in the deck. So that's just kind of how we mess with the ratios when it comes to the deck. And there you go. Like that's the deck. Like then basically, like I said, like if you play against an alpha quadrant opponent, you can 2-mission win. You can potentially 2-mission win, but at the very least, we're rolling down on the same kind of game plan here, like messing with the opponent, grinding them out, and see if we can't just win. You know, to see if we can't just win that way, by just being a little bit farther ahead of them. So, as far as the actual tournament went, Andreas was able to grind out a modified win against Michael. Then he grinds out the modified win against Stefan with his Borg deck. And then against Neil, he took the loss. His tournament report is here. So if you want to read that, you certainly can. And then he actually, he has his article here about why he chose to play the Dilemma Spam deck. So you can always read that as well to get inside Andreas's head. He has it. He has it all written out here. He even says that like his day 2 deck, that the day 1 deck was also a possible day 2 deck, so he wasn't even sure if he was going to play this deck or if he was going to play his day 1 deck all over again. He does acknowledge that like day 2 strongly depends on pairings and brackets. So he kind of understood that he's like, it's just kind of impossible to have like just one deck planned for day 2. You need to have like options available to you. And that's kind of what I was saying before, that when it comes right down to it, like you should have like a like super fast mission solver that you believe in. You need to have like a janky like, battle or deck like this available to you. And so yeah, like, Andres definitely had like the same idea in mind. It's just that when it came down to it, my observation is that once he actually like the brackets were set and he's number 7 and he's down here, like MVB's the first opponent, and then if he wins for his trouble, he gets Stefan or Florian. Regardless of who he pulls from the top of the bracket in the final, it's like he's got to get through the first 2. So, like I said, I applaud Andreas's thinking. He clearly was in that correct headspace of like, you gotta like, whatever you decide to play, you're betting on your matchups. Like, what do I need to do to get that advantage in the matchups? And playing 29 dilemmas kind of falls in the same footsteps of what Neil was doing in day 1, which was, okay, if I'm facing other solvers, I want more dilemmas to get myself an edge. If I'm facing jank, more dilemmas is the way that I can deal with pretty much any jank that I might face. If I'm facing some kind of like crazy, like, we're going to press the limits, of possibly being overpowered solver deck, well, you can kind of deal with that by just having more dilemmas and playing with dilemmas that an opponent doesn't anticipate. Which that is the one thing that I, with Andreas choosing to play with the copies of Mission Fatigue, is he's bringing a lot of random selections into the mix, which are impossible to plan for as an opponent. He's playing with a copy of More of Your Kind. So he's like, and then of course also Reflections, which are, you're going to lose half of who's ever attempting to, you're going to have half of them get stopped before facing the next dilemma, so you don't know what's going to get through. So you can't put together like a high-powered team to go in there because you don't even know, I don't even know what I'm going to stop. So, like I said, I applaud Andreas' approach on this at day 2. He and Neil both did, I think, very smart by just playing a ton of dilemmas, because rules and, my observation is that rules and design and errata have definitely done a good job of, like, you know, tamping down the borderline overpowered stuff, so that, like, the tier 1 decks are all kind of now closer to the tier 2s and tier 1.5 decks, so that, like, you can be playing a tier 2 deck, but if it's well situated and you play it well, you can beat a tier 1 deck. And that's where a healthy game is at, is when a tier 2 and a tier 1.5 deck, when in a good matchup, in a good meta, and or being played really well by someone, can win, right? So, yeah, I think that this year's Worlds was one of the healthiest metas that we've seen in a long time. I think that a lot of the players did a really good job of bringing decks that were fun, fair, but also still really good, so that pretty much, like, everybody was having a good time, everyone was competing hard, and then, to, like I said, to the point of, like, design and rules, have done a really good job of, like, kind of taking away a lot of the OP stuff, thus putting a higher premium on players playing their decks well. So congratulations to Neil, congratulations to Andreas for their performance, everybody that made, you know, day 2, good job. And going back to day 1 quick, I did like a lot of what I saw here from a lot of these other decks that didn't make the cut, players that didn't make the cut for day 2. There's definitely some, like, really interesting stuff in here. I liked Johann's Alpha Dominion Cardassian deck. It looked good and interesting, playing a copy of Environmental Suit, playing with emergency transport units, which he can play for free, to the remote supply depot to try to get an edge against some kill dilemmas. I thought that's pretty good. Yaroslav's Herojin deck is good. Like, he was still trying to squeak the obsession points even after the errata. So I like him still. I liked what he was doing, trying to, like, you know, still press on that button a little bit and see what you can do with it. There was one other one here. Can't remember which one it was now that I was looking at, and I saw something that was really interesting. Oh yeah, and I don't know. I don't think he's the only one to do this, because I think there's been a couple people that I've seen do this, where they, like, try to jank an opponent's math with copies of Woteln at an outpost. That's interesting. I have a similar idea deck. It doesn't do this, but it's the similar idea of, like, messing with span that I'm going to have in a future video. So look forward to that at some point. So, but yeah, it looks like Worlds, from all accounts, was a ton of fun. Johans does an amazing job with his Kaiser Fest seemingly every year, whether it's a Worlds, Continentals, or whatever. So, you know, it looks like it was a great time. And of course, I think Worlds in 2026 is going to be back here in the United States. But, you know, I get the feeling that international players are not going to want to come to the United States next year, and I would not blame them. So I kind of get the feeling that Worlds in the U.S. here this next year, you know, I don't know that we're going to get 20 people at it, and there might even be an argument for why. You know, there might even be an argument that that it should maybe just be held overseas for 2 years in a row. But we'll see. I don't know. Things change. Things change quickly, and not digging too deep into the politics of it, but, you know, people who are just coming for a very short time for a vacation are not people that are being hassled or targeted. So, you know, having Worlds here in the United States might still be a thing that, like, I could encourage our overseas friends to still come to and not worry too much about it. If anything, if that happens, we have Worlds in the U.S. next year, probably be in a place where There's going to be other nerds that are going to be able to like take our international friends under their wing and kind of get them around safely, even if they're if it's even an issue. It's hard to say at this point. There's just too much craziness going on. So, but yeah, Worlds 2025 looks like it was an absolute success. So, you know, feather in the cap of Johans for again running in another amazing event. So, hope you've enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already. Look forward to more videos for me again here now. And yeah, may the profits be with you.